Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I am Mike Coletta.
And this week we are covering Chapter 20 in the Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen L. Kent called The New Empire. We covered this chapter last week, but it's so big that we wanted to split it up into 2 episodes, so this is part 2. Mike, take it away.
Hey, everybody. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about Legend of Zelda, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Metroid.
Oh, man, big fan.
Big fan. But this week, we're going to talk about the third-party licensed games.
Okay.
And in the book, they actually have little mentions of them, but they don't really go into it. So I've done a little side research, little side work here, and give you a little more context with these games. So the gist of it is, Nintendo not only had The Legend of Zelda, Punch-Out, and Metroid, but they had a lot of third-party licensed games in 1987. And Konami was the first company to really take advantage of this. They used their 5-game limit with 5 dingers, if I have to say.
Yeah?
Prime games.
Real great games.
Real great A games. USDA choice games. And
that was the whole point for Nintendo. They were like, if you only have 5 games a year, you're going to make 5 good ones.
And they did.
Yeah.
Oh, how they did. The first game was called Gradius. And it was a side-scrolling space shooter. And they had a special code that would unlock secret weapons for your ship. And that code, spoiler alerts if you want to find it out on your own, is up twice, down twice, left, right, B, A, and then start. And the cool thing about this code is it was later used in a lot of Konami games. So if you played Gradius and you knew that code, you could have codes for other games.
So that's where the code originated from, the Konami code.
Yeah, the Konami code.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I would have said it was like Contra or something if somebody said, what was the first game with the Konami code?
Yeah, I think Contra had it.
Yeah, Contra definitely
had it, but we're going to get to Contra later, too.
Oh, yeah.
The second game they had that came out was Track and Field. And this was a successful Konami arcade title where you just button mash the jump button or run button, you know?
Nice.
And it later came out for NES as Hyper Olympics was the name of it.
This is not the same one that was later included on a cartridge with Duck Hunt and Mario Pad?
No, this is not the one with the trackpad.
Okay,
this is a different game.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and it only included 4 of the original arcade version's 6 events. So it was like a shortened version of the game, but that was very popular. Double Dribble was a basketball simulation that looked a lot like NBA Jam. It's called Double Dribble. And I think Double Dribble might have inspired NBA Jam a lot because when you look at it, it was definitely just the same view kind of thing, like side 2-on-2. It might have been 3-on-3, I think, because I think NBA Jam's 2-on-2.
Yeah, NBA Jam's 2-on-2.
It might have been 3-on-3. And it actually, when it was released for the Famicom disc cartridge in Japan, it was titled Exciting Basketball, which I do love the titles of games still.
The best kind of basketball.
Oh, yeah. The fourth game that came out for Konami was called Rush and Attack. Rush, the letter N, Attack. It's a play on words of Russian attack.
Oh, I get it.
And where you would run around, and it was originally released on home computers as Green Beret was the name of it. It was a 2D side-scroller where you'd run around with a knife, and then you'd just be jabbing people. But the knife, it just looked kind of like a giant satellite phone you were stabbing people with. It was really big. And then you'd pick up guns as you went along. It looks kind of like a pre-Contra without the jumping, like you were just kind of running around. And then finally, and this is the big one they came out with, the book, we love the book. But they definitely, this chapter, I feel like they didn't go into detail on some stuff. And the last game they didn't go into detail on is Castlevania.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in the original Castlevania, if you don't know, you control Simon Belmont, and your one job is to kill Dracula. And you do that by jumping through 18 stages of a castle to find him.
Wow.
And you had a whip, and there apparently was a short delay on the whip. If you hit the button, he wouldn't whip right away. It was a little delay to it, so you had to play for that, too.
Yeah, there's a little animation that plays.
Yeah.
That you're not hitting right away, yeah.
And he also had a timer, too, so you couldn't take too long. It sounds punishingly hard.
Yeah.
I never played the first one.
I also have not played it, but they're kind of similar to, Metroid games, right?
Yeah.
Sort of the idea of, getting things and then going back to the place.
Yeah.
Something that you missed earlier or something you couldn't achieve earlier, but now you have these cool upgrades so you can go back.
Isn't the whole genre called Metroidvania?
It is, yeah.
Ooh, look at that. A little history. Yeah. On a history podcast? Get out of here.
Because they're so similar. Yeah,
that's right. Another company that had really good games was Data East.
Oh,
they also had a license from Nintendo.
Is this the company that made Tiger Heli?
They might have. I didn't talk about Tiger Heli in this.
I might be thinking of something else.
This is only really 1987, so maybe they made that later. The first game they made was called Tag Team Wrestling. and it was known as Big Pro Wrestling in Japan. And in the NES version, there were 2 teams, the Strong Bads and the Ricky Fighters, and they would duke it out.
The Strong Bads?
Strong Bads sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
Because in the comic Homestar Runner, Strong Bad, the character, is named after this game.
Oh,
the Strong
wow.
Bads. Yeah,
That's great.
It's like like an 80s pop culture reference.
Huh,
So
I didn't know that.
yeah, and the second game was called Karate Champ, and this game is probably what started the modern fighting game.
Oh, yeah?
Karate Champ by Data East. You look at it, it's the first one to have player versus player, and they would duke it out, but you're in like karate gear. There's no special powers yet. Okay. And in the arcade version, they had a single player mode and a PvP mode, and in the NES version, they really went for that player versus player.
Yeah.
They were really pushing that. And then the last game that came out, Data East did, was Burger Time, which we've talked about before on the podcast.
Yeah.
But that originally came out on the Intellivision, ColecoVision, and the old Atari systems, and it was moved over through a Data East license to the NES.
Yeah, that's one of those games that just kind of comes back every now and then. Like how we still see Pac-Man games. Like we still see kind of Burger Time games throughout the years.
Of these games I mentioned, by the way, I looked on their Wikipedias just to get like a little background on them, too. And a lot of them were re-released not only for Nintendo 2DS or DS or iPhone. Some of these games were released on iPhone, on iOS, which I thought was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, Toby, podcast producer Toby in the studio. He's a cat. I should preface that. There's not a third person here.
We can't afford that.
Yeah, we can't afford a third person. We can only afford this cat that just chews on cords and pushes buttons. The third company I'm going to talk about in 1987 that had the license was Taito, who we've mentioned before briefly. This game is really cool. It's called Elevator Action, and the story is you're a spy that is infiltrating a 30-story building while being chased by enemy agents. And the cool thing about it is the building has like different styles. So the first level has escalators on the side and then elevators in the middle. And then as you go up, it gets like narrower and then it widens out if it can. But it's a really cool thing because you have like a little silenced pistol and you're like shooting the enemy agents too. And you're coming in and out of doors. It's kind of like a farce. Like you're going in and out of a lot of doors, working your way up. It looked really fun. I watched a video of it. And also they're like usually about 3 stories and each one had about 4 doors in it. That was like the basic structure of it. But it looks like a fun game. I was like, this could be like a phone game. They could re-release this as a phone game. Maybe up the graphics a little bit.
Maybe you should make this game, release it, then we can afford a real producer.
That's right. We could get a real
We could just get
podcast
upgrades
producer,
for
or we could just get another cat.
Yeah.
2 podcast producing cats. The second game that Taito made was called Legend of Cage. And in it, you're a ninja named Cage who has to platform and fight ninjas through 5 stages to rescue Princess Kiri from the evil villains Yoshi and Yuki. And you have a short sword and unlimited shuriken, which are the throwing stars.
Yeah.
So it looks like pretty fun. Isn't there a... What's the ninja game that came out? Ninja Gaiden?
Ninja Gaiden, yeah.
Is that... I've never played that. Is it like that? Does it sound familiar like that? Is that a platforming kind of game?
Yeah, it's kind of a side-scrolling platform and really, really hard.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It's like one of those games that you talk about when people say things are Nintendo hard.
Oh, yeah.
Ninja Gaiden is Nintendo hard, right up there with like Battletoads and stuff like that.
Battletoads.
Oh, boy.
That's great. We could do a whole episode on Battletoads, including the GameStop prank. The last game was called Arkanoid, which was essentially the NES version of the game Breakout, where you would break bricks with Pong.
Oh, yeah.
And the cool thing about this game is it had a controller adapter that came with the game that put a knob on it, so you can move the paddle with a knob instead of using the D-pad.
Nice.
So that was kind of a cool little extra.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then the next company is SNK Corporation. And this company was different because instead of creating or porting their own games from arcade, they just licensed other companies' arcade games. So they really only just filled out some paperwork and then transferred these games over to NES cartridges. And their big contribution to the games was the games Ikari Warriors and Ikari Warriors 2. And these were top-down run and gun games where sometimes you were in a tank and sometimes you were in like just a Rambo looking dude running around just murdering people. And I watched a playthrough of this one and I really thought it was cool because it had really good music and really cool sound effects. Like when you threw a grenade, it would be like, pew! Like it would do like the whole sound effect thing, which I thought was pretty neat. Also, if you're like, hey, Mike, I didn't feel like you explained enough about these games to me. Just so you know, all of these games, you could just type them in on YouTube, and there are people doing full playthroughs of them in like an hour and a half. It's pretty nuts.
Speedruns?
Yeah, there's like speedruns of all of these games. That's what I watched to get like more context with these ones, because like I said, the book just tells you what they are and a little very basic thing, but I wanted to get more context because these games are all pretty cool. Especially If I had to pick a favorite of these ones, I would definitely say that elevator action game looked like it would be really fun. But then again, I mean, strong bad. So I don't know. I can't make up my mind. And the last company that the book mentions was Capcom, saying they were the most successful one. And then it's like one paragraph, and then the paragraph cuts out. And the reason they're the most successful one is because of the game Mega Man.
Oh, yeah.
Because Mega Man came out in 1987. So this is where we're fully going away from the book, because the book doesn't mention Mega Man at all. And I'm like, it is time for us to talk about Mega Man today, right now. So here we go. Here's a little brief history portion. Mega Man was Capcom's first game exclusively designed for Japanese home consoles. So before this, they only did arcade hits. And they wanted to bring in fresh talent, so they got a recent college grad artist named Keiji Inafune. Gosh, again, I'm just butchering names really badly. I hope the listener forgives me. Please forgive me. This dude is actually really awesome. His first 2 games he ever worked on were Mega Man and the original Street Fighter. So this guy is just cranking out hits.
Yeah.
Okay,
he's still working on Mega Man games, isn't he?
He does.
Or Mighty Number 9.
Yeah, so he actually did all of the art. He was the illustrator for every Mega Man game for the NES and the SNES. And then he took a break, and then he came back to actually be a producer on some of the newer Mega Man games. Mega Man was directed by Akira Kitamura, and Nobuyuki Matsushima was the lead programmer. And the team consisted of only 6 people. There were only 6 people working on Mega Man.
Wow.
Which is pretty nuts when you think about it.
Yeah, it's so weird how just back in the day, how few people it took to really make a good game. Now it's like you need hundreds of people. You need artists, programmers, animators, sound designers, like gameplay designers, everything. There's so much that goes into it. And back then it was just like, hey, I got an idea. Okay, well, bring it to me by the end of the week. Okay, cool. And it's just like hit games like Mega Man.
Yep, I was like, all right, see you soon.
Yeah.
Bring it out. Inafune actually is quoted as saying, quote, back then, people weren't specialized and we had to do a lot of different things because there were so few people. So I really ended up doing all the characters. And Inafune was heavily influenced by the protagonist of Osamu Tezuka's manga Astro Boy. So Mega Man was like very much based on Astro Boy.
Yeah, I can see the influence there.
Yeah, and the reason he was colored blue is because of the limitations of the NES system. That's the only reason that Mega Man is blue, is because it's the only color they could make him that didn't like go into the background of the rest of the game.
Huh.
Gameplay was inspired by rock, paper, scissors. I didn't know this. This explains so much of why I died a lot. You had to have the right weapon that does the right damage to a boss. And there are 6 bosses. And if you didn't have the right weapon, you were doing no damage to the boss, essentially. And I didn't realize this. I was like, why am I dying so much? You have to have the right match. So while you can pick whatever order you want to do the 6 bosses in, there really is like an order that's going to be easier for you.
Yeah. That's cool, though, because you can kind of choose your challenge if you want to. It's like sort of like when you pick up your Pokemon at the beginning of Pokemon, and like if you pick Charmander, you're going to have a hard time for those first 2 gyms.
Yeah, but then you can just be a machine for the rest of it.
Yeah.
The other names brainstormed, it wasn't Mega Man at first. The other names were Mighty Kid, Knuckle Kid, and Rainbow Man. And Rainbow Man was chosen because when you selected a different weapon, Mega Man changed colors.
Isn't he? He's known as Rockman in Japan, right?
That's right. That's the next note. Mega Man's original name was Rockman, and his sister's name was supposed to be Roll. So it's like rock and roll. And he was known as Rockman in Japan, and the name was changed when the game was released in the U.S. Sales weren't very good at first because of the terrible album artwork.
Oh, yeah, that first Mega Man.
It's bad.
It's truly awful.
And the reason it's so bad is the president of Capcom was like, we got to get this artwork done tomorrow. And they hired someone to do it in like 6 hours and then print it the next day.
Yeah.
Just Google original Mega Man artwork. I can't stress how bad it is. It's like a dude. It's kind of realistic, so he looks just like a really bulky dude in like weird looking shape armor. He's like
in like a weird
background.
Position with like a gun that he's shooting.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah.
The score was done by Manami Matsume, and she worked on a lot of games for Capcom, including Dynasty Wars, Mercs, and Magic Sword. And she actually, I saw this on her Wikipedia page, that she came out with her first album in 2015.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Check that out.
Yeah, that's right. So and she actually works, she went back to other games too. So I think she worked on other Mega Man games as well. The game was crazy successful and had So many sequels. There are currently, I think it was over 50 different Mega Man games.
Yeah, there's a lot. Because there was 8 on the NES alone, right?
Yeah, it's nuts. And you can get that collection.
Yeah.
That has like the first 8 and then it has the next 8 or whatever.
Yeah, and then there was the X series, which I think was on Super Nintendo and maybe on PlayStation also. And then there was a whole bunch for Game Boy. There was Mega Man for Game Boy, but then there's like the Battle Network games and the Legends games, and like there's just tons of Mega Man games.
Yeah, there's so many games.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of them all.
That 1987 one though was a huge hit, and here is a summary of from Wikipedia that summarizes the plot of the game. The game begins with the struggle of the humanoid robot and player character Mega Man against the mad scientist Dr. Wily and the 6 robot masters under his control. Mega Man's non-linear gameplay lets the player choose the order in which to complete its initial 6 stages, which culminates in a robot master boss battle that awards the player character a unique weapon. So each boss you kill gives you a new weapon.
That's way cool.
Yeah. It's kind of cool. It's like, yeah, it has a good build, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot.
Like the slowly gaining power as you go by having more options to choose from with your weapons, yeah.
My personal anecdote to end the Mega Man summary portion of this podcast is it's so hard. I got the Mega Man collection a couple weeks ago. It was free on Xbox to try with Game Pass. I got nowhere. I don't know if it was like the Xbox controller or just not knowing where to go, or I was getting murdered every second. It was so hard.
Game's tough. They had to be back in the day because they weren't really actually that long.
Yeah.
So in order to elongate your playtime, you had to like memorize them. The only Mega Man game that I've really spent any like significant amount of time with was it was a Mega Man game for my TI-83 calculator.
Nice.
Which I'm sure was like not a sanctioned Mega Man game, you know? But yeah, I spent a lot of time playing that game in class on my calculator, just being like, oh, I'm just doing math on my calculator.
Just doing a bunch of math. We talked about that game, the top-down fighter game, too, where you're like a starfighter. And you can update that's a great one.
Yeah, you could do a whole...
So many good games for TI-83.
Yeah, TI-83 had a lot of good games. Actually, Polygon's History of Fun podcast did a whole episode on TI-83 gaming.
Oh, yeah?
Which is, it was pretty interesting.
That's it. Oh, yeah, I got to check that out. Okay, that was Mega Man. Do you feel like you got a little...
I feel like I know a lot about Mega Man now. They made a 9 and 10 also later. They were like in the style of NES, but they were like Xbox 360 games.
That's cool. Yeah. It should, just up the look a little bit, make it look really sharp.
Yeah, they were some of the ones that really kickstart the like sort of retro, like making new games that are retro styled. People got really excited when they were like, oh, it's Mega Man, and it's just like old Mega Man's, but it's just a new Mega Man.
It just looks cool. Nice, yeah. Okay, now we're going to get into the first iterations. I would say this is the build-up to the Sega Nintendo console wars.
Yes.
So the first thing that happened with them is the 1987 Winter Consumer Electronics Show. Their booths were next to each other, Sega and Nintendo.
Oh.
And Sega had a pretty sweet pair of 3D glasses for the Master System designed by Mark Cerny, and he was a young game designer that actually created the game Marble Madness.
Mark Cerny. That name sounds familiar. He would later go work somewhere else, wouldn't he?
I think so. I think it doesn't mention in the book, but when I Googled him, he definitely has other... Yeah. He might still be in the industry, too. He's probably building stuff still. The 3D glasses were lightweight and could fit over other glasses if need be, for all you nerds out there, like me and Tyler, who wear glasses.
I definitely need... That's why I don't go watch 3D movies, is because I can't put them over my glasses.
Yeah, I have a pair of sunglasses that fits over my glasses. It's so nice if I'm driving. Okay, that's off the point. PC games would actually try this same technology 10 years later to enhance their games, which I thought was kind of interesting that the PC gaming did it 10 years after Sega did it.
Huh.
Nintendo, at the time, was showcasing their knitting machine, which we briefly discussed last episode, and we're not going to talk about that anymore. It's really not to say. It was bad. It was like teaching people how to knit. No one really cared. It was... In fact, there's a couple of quotes in the book talking about people being like, what are they doing? Like, why do they have this?
Howard had it right when he was like, don't
do this knitting machine. Yeah. So Sega had a small victory at the 1987 Consumer Electronics Show, but they definitely lost the war between the NES and the Sega Master System. Yeah. Target was nice and marketed the Master System heavy, and Siskel and Ebert even reviewed the Master System and NES side by side for a holiday special in 1987. And they both sided with the Sega Master System. But the problem was none of this mattered because Nintendo already had somewhere between 86 to 93% of the market at the time. By the time Sega had sold 100,000 Master Systems, the NES had sold over 2 million NESs.
Sega had no games.
Sega had no games. And
it did better in Europe and in like Brazil and South America. Like there are areas that were like, oh yeah, it was an actual like console war there. But in the United States, it was just a blowout.
Yeah, and this actually prompted Sega to decide that they like actually closed their whole in-house marketing system and their whole in-house marketing division and signed a 2-year partnership with Tonka Toys.
Hey,
Tonka truck people. So that's where we're at as far as Sega and Nintendo go.
So Tonka marketed
for Sega.
Okay.
For the Master System, yeah. It wasn't a failure. I mean, they sold that much. They just were so behind Nintendo. Like, they're still a
Nintendo
company.
had the head start.
Nintendo had the head start. I mean, the Famicom was designed in 1983?
Yeah.
So, yeah, they had a 4-year head start at this point.
This is a pattern we'll kind of see repeat itself throughout the console generations. It's the one that gets to market first is generally the one that wins.
Yeah.
Like PS2, Xbox 360. I guess the Wii U is in kind of a weird spot, so I wouldn't really consider it. I would consider it just super late too.
Yeah, very late
instead of early. But yeah, it's just an interesting. I think the Genesis eventually outsells the Super Nintendo by the end of that generation, and it was out a little bit before also. So
yeah, it really is. Like,
spoilers
get in
for
there
future
first.
episodes.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think instead of spoilers, just preview.
Yeah.
Tyler's just giving you a little something, a little preview.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about Nintendo Power Magazine.
Oh, yes.
So Nintendo games were in such demand at the unusual time of after the holidays. Like, so the holidays are the big time to sell toys. That's pretty well known. But in January and February 1988, the NES was still selling like hotcakes, gangbusters. It was crazy, okay? And people wanted more news about upcoming games. So Nintendo decided to start a quarterly newsletter called the Nintendo Fun Club News. And it started as a 2 different color, 12-page Nintendo newsletter, but quickly jumped to 24 pages. And then by the spring of 1988 issue, RoccoW decided to publish a full magazine. And the magazine was named Nintendo Power. Like, this is where Nintendo Power comes from. And Nintendo Power was a bi-monthly magazine that had game tips, news, and no ads, except for Nintendo products.
Wow.
It was just very much like, here's all the Nintendo products we have going on.
I was a loyal Nintendo Power reader from about 1998 to probably 2005, probably till about 2005.
I wish I would have got in on it. I think I had a couple of them as a kid, but I never subscribed.
I got piles of them at home that if I had room for them, I would bring them here. By say at home, I mean my parents' house.
And you would put them on a bookshelf?
Yeah, a lot of them are really destroyed and beat up and ripped up. But
well, I mean, you're a kid and you're reading magazines.
Yeah, but man, they were like, that was like my Bible. Like when the new Nintendo Power magazine was in the mailbox, it was like Christmas all over again. It was so great. I read about so many games. I like all the strategies and the cheat codes. Man,
it's great.
Loved it.
I will say by 1989, more than 1 million people subscribed to the magazine. It was a huge success.
It was super great.
And one cool feature about this was the NES Achievers section, which was a 2-page spread in every issue that showed the high scores in various Game Boy and NES games. And I have a quote from a pretty rad dude that I will now read. It's on page 361. Here we go. You ready for it?
Mm-hmm.
Quote, I had my name in Nintendo Power magazine several times for top score on Game Boy Tetris. It got to the point that they wouldn't print my name again, so I had to use a fake name. My first name backwards and my last name backwards. Yvette's Kainzao. I saw the fake name in there one day, and I thought it was somebody else and said, oh my god, his score is better than mine. I was trying to figure it out, and then I noticed that Yvette's Kainzao lived in Saratoga, and I remembered sending it in.
Who was that?
Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple Computers. He was apparently in there all the time.
Just a pro Tetris player.
Really into Tetris. That seems like the kind of game that like a computer programmer guy would play. Tetris. It's just like everything must be in order, put into shape. Nintendo was taking a lot of flack at the time with parents complaining that kids were playing Nintendo too much and not doing their schoolwork. And instead of getting super defensive, Nintendo was like, we're going to dive into this. And they decided to focus on education in a little contest called Invent the Ultimate Video Game.
Oh, man, this sounds awesome.
It was a contest put through Nintendo Power, and kids just needed to send in ideas, not fully designed games. And a lot of the ideas were educational, And the finalists were brought to Washington, D.C. in February of 1989 to exhibit their ideas in the rotunda of the Senate office building, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
The winner was Jeffrey Scott Campbell of Aurora, Colorado. He got a $3,000 scholarship. They don't say what his idea was.
Oh, did they end up making it?
I don't think so. Like, I tried to find it. I couldn't find it anywhere. And they said he was runner. One of the runners up was a girl who'd had a presidential race simulation, which I thought was pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I think it's games like that, like very educational, like Oregon Trail, like games like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to go into a controversy. Yeah, here we go. Nintendo was known for strict anti-violence and inappropriate themes in games. Like, they didn't want those in their games at all. Like, let's take those out. And Contra was actually banned from Toys R Us until Minoru Arakawa himself called Toys R Us and was like, hey, you know us. We wouldn't put a game out if it was overtly violent or inappropriate for children.
Toys R Us decided they were like, we're not going to sell this game?
Yeah, and he's like, hey, we wouldn't sell this. You know Nintendo. And Nintendo had such a strong reputation for being one that was like, we make good games for kids, that Toys R Us immediately was like, okay, you're right. We'll put it on the shelves. Like, that's the reputation they had. But they didn't always catch it, though. There was a port of a Commodore Amiga, which is a home computer game, made by Jaleco called Maniac Mansion, and they missed an Easter egg that involved taking a NPC's hamster, putting it in a microwave. The hamster would explode, and then when you returned it to the player, the NPC, it would transform you into a ghost, and then you can roam around the mansion as much as you want.
Whoa.
This Easter egg was not noticed until after Nintendo sold 250,000 copies of the game.
Whoops.
Yeah, so it's pretty inappropriate to put a hamster in a microwave.
Yeah.
So they changed the Easter egg, but they really tried to catch everything and be like kid friendly, which I thought was pretty cool because that's how you sell. That's why they were so successful when you think about it. The holiday rush of 1988, Nintendo had 2 famous sequels coming up at the holidays of 1988. A sequel to The Legend of Zelda, and a sequel to Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, man. These are going to be some big games.
Yeah, and the sequels were so in demand, they actually took pre-orders of the game. This is where it started.
Oh, no.
Pre-orders.
We go all the way back to 1988.
That's right. They also had a limited supply of these games, so they were pre-ordering for a reason, because Nintendo preferred small manufacturing runs and making players wait for games because they did not want any overstock.
Yeah.
Nintendo hated overstock.
Well, all of their marketing people were the Atari marketing people, and they were like, no overstock. No overstock. We will never buy more games than we are going to sell.
Just like burning copies of E.T. on VHS.
Yeah, they did not want that
we don't want this. The Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, was the first game. It still involved dungeon crawling, but it was less focused on puzzles and exploration and more focused on combat. I watched video of this game, and it has that top-down Zelda on like a mini map where you're like a big player and you go to like towns and stuff.
Yep.
And then it would turn into like a side-scrolling 2D game.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of weird.
It had some cool RPG elements where after you finish dungeons, you could like upgrade your stats and stuff. It was a neat game, like a neat idea for a game. It was not a great Zelda game. Probably should have been a different game. Mm-hmm. But it was still pretty cool, and like it had some cool ideas, and yeah.
It seemed fun. It was for me. What was crazy about it is you'd go into these levels and like these caves, and it was dark, and you couldn't see the enemies. Mm-hmm. The enemies were just in the black darkness shooting at you, and you had to like kind of find them based on. You'd see like little wiggles, like little squiggly lines near the brick blocks that you could tell they were there, and that was the only way you could tell. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah. That game also came in a gold cartridge.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I am a sucker for a gold cartridge.
Yeah.
Everyone here knows it. Super Mario Brothers 2.
Oh, yeah.
As we discussed briefly in last week's episode, I think we talked about it a little bit, wasn't the actual Super Mario Brothers 2 from Japan. It was a reskinned version of a game called Doki Doki Panic. And the real Super Mario Brothers 2 that came out in Japan was way harder, and they didn't want to market it to the US. Some things they included were poisonous mushrooms that would just instantly kill Mario, and a changing weather system that messed with your jumps.
Yeah.
So it would start raining and wind, and and then you couldn't jump as well.
Howard Phillips, though, he was like, he's like, Americans are not very good at video games.
We're not good at video games
and so we need you to not bring this game over here.
I will say that the Doki Doki Panic version of Super Mario Brothers 2, while very different from Super Mario Brothers, sold 6.76 million copies worldwide.
Still a great game.
Very successful game.
It's very different. Still good.
Yep. And that's actually where we're going to leave it today.
Yeah.
We're
Super Mario Brothers 2.
At Super Mario Brothers 2. And the next episode we're going to get real legal on it. We're going to talk about the legal ramifications of certain things in video games at the time.
Oh, boy.
So I think Magnavox is involved in this a little bit.
Oh, do they think they own everything video game console?
Yeah, copywriting a little bit. So it's going to be, if you're into legal stuff, you're going to get so excited next episode.
Yep. We're going to law school. We're going to get a degree.
We're both doing that. The next episode comes out in 2 years.
I wish it were only 2 years. It'll be 8 years until we're... No, just kidding.
Yeah, but so I'm kind of excited to get into the more legal aspect of the whole thing and see how it goes. Because this is really these are going to be the court cases that kind of define how video games are now.
Yep. Yeah, these are court cases that are still like referenced today as precedent for other things. So.
I think it also goes a lot into how Nintendo had a lot of control over third-party publishers, and I think they had too much control in the eyes of the law.
Anti-competitive.
Yeah, so we're going to go into that next episode. But Tyler, what you been playing?
I've been playing the standard. I've been playing Destiny, and I've been playing World of Warcraft. Whatever. I've been talking about those every week. I just picked up a game today, though, called Dead Cells.
Ooh.
Which we were talking about Metroidvanias earlier. Dead Cells is a Metroidvania, but it's like the whole world is randomly generated, and every time you die, that's it. You're done. You start over from the very beginning. And it's really hard, and you die a lot. The catch is, or like the twist, and this is standard for roguelike games like this, I think, but this is the first one that I really, it's really sunk its teeth into me a little bit, is that as you play, you get these things called dead cells. And when you get to the end of a level, you can spend those dead cells on permanent upgrades. So the next time you die, you have to start the whole game over. You can be a little bit more powerful, or you've made a little bit more progress towards a upgrade that you really want. So there's a mix of both. I have to learn this game so that I can get further into it, just knowing the enemies and knowing how things go. But I'm also just slowly getting stronger anyway. So even if I'm bashing my head against the wall here and not really getting better at it, I'm still making progress. And then C, the game is randomly generated every time. So every time you play it, it's new. The whole the layout's all new. So it's about learning the current layout that you have and adapting to it. That makes it really fun. So you don't end up playing the same stuff over and over, even though you die a lot and you play the same stuff over and over. It's different every time you play it. So
that sounds really fun. I need to get this game.
It's really fun. It's like, I think it's $20 on Steam right now. I think it just came out of early access. It's like, it's fully done.
This is the game. I think I've decided, bold stance here that I'm sure a lot of people agree with me on. I don't want to buy anything in early access anymore. I've done it before. I'm not going to do it I'm not going to do it again.
I don't either. Because it's like, sometimes I'll buy an early access game knowing that I want to fund this game and I want this game to be made. I almost never play a game in early access because I find that you're playing the game in an early state. It's probably not great, and you can ruin it for yourself if you play a game that's not great when it's still being made. And then when it finally comes out, you're just like, you're just not excited for it, even though it's probably great now because it's been given time to be made. But so sometimes I'll buy a game just to give them the money for it. But I don't play it until it comes out.
Well, this is a perfect slide right into what I picked up PUBG again. My brother's Xbox. He moved. Little family life about me. My brother moved, and his Xbox is out of storage now. We were playing it. Picked up PUBG again last night, and it actually plays pretty good now.
Oh, good.
I mean, I've learned my lessons. I'm never buying an early access game ever again.
It's still early access on Xbox,
It's still in early access. But
it's not on PC. It's out.
And now it doesn't... It's out on PC?
Mm-hmm. It's been out for a few months on PC.
Wow. Yeah. See, it's like they don't... It loads in now, so I don't get killed that way. That was what would happen is I'd load in, I'd parachute down, and the buildings would look like Play-Doh, and I would just die because I couldn't go in. And it was a hard drive issue. Like the Xbox hard drive was too slow. And that was fixed. They did something to make it so it loads faster for everybody, which is cool. But they also added a ton of extra weapon accessories, and it's just a very different game. And I was playing with my brother and having a good time, but him and I might pick up Battlefield 1 again and just play that for fun.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had a good time playing that, and that game is done. It's finished, and everything's come out for it, and I really enjoy it. I also, speaking of platformers, picked up new Super Mario Brothers 2 for Game Boy, for DS. I always want to say Game Boy. 2DS. I played on my 2DS, and it was what I needed. Just a fun little, easy, you don't really think about it, fun Mario game. I had a good time. Take a little break from Pokemon, pick that up soon again. It was good. Yeah. It's real good.
That's great. You got to play 3D Land.
Oh, yeah. That's for DS?
Yeah, there's 3D Land for 3DS or 2DS. And then there's 3D World, which is for Wii U. That's my favorite Mario game of all time, Super Mario 3D World.
Ooh, I always wanted to play that, and I wanted to play Galaxy. I never played Galaxy.
Oh, Galaxy's great too.
Super Mario Brothers, just a strong brand.
Real strong franchise. Yeah.
Nintendo knows what they're doing.
Yeah. I know I'll ruffle some feathers when I say 3D World is my favorite. That's not to say that the others aren't great. I love Galaxy. I love Sunshine. I love Super Mario World. I love Super Mario Bros. 3. Odyssey has yet to grab me. I need to get back into it. I played it for a few hours and I was like, okay, this is fine.
You know when it grabbed me? When you threw that cap at that T-Rex and you can control that T-Rex.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That's when it grabbed me entirely.
I like the music from it.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty fun. Yeah.
I've been really trying to notice music designers in games and sound designers more because I feel like they're really like, you know, it was great. Like if you play a game where it's a shooting game, for example, and the guns actually sound different, like half the time in Destiny 2, I would use a gun that I like the way it sounds.
Oh, Graviton Lance?
Yeah.
So good. Nameless Midnight sounds awesome.
And in Destiny 1, Icebreaker, which was this sniper rifle that regened ammo, you would never pick up ammo for it. It would just regen it over time. It sounded so cool when you got a headshot and it blew up too. It was great. Sound designers.
Yeah. Sound design, music. Every time I see a game that's like Grant Kirkhope did the music for, he did the music for Banjo-Kazooie. Like he did the music for the latest like Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. And I was like, man, I love this guy. And the music sounds like Banjo-Kazooie music. It's so good. Dead Cells has also some really good music too. That's one of the other things. Like I don't mind playing the first level over and over because the music is just so good.
So you do beat the level after a while.
Yeah, you beat the level, and then you move on to the next level. And it like once you get sort of good and you kind of have a feel for the controls, the first level only takes like 2 minutes to beat. And because when you die in the second level, you're done. You go all the way back to the very beginning.
Oh.
Yeah. So you're not really supposed to finish it, although I think once you have enough upgrades to make the game significantly easier, you can definitely finish it. You're not supposed to finish it like your first try. You're definitely supposed to die a lot to get upgrades and just keep playing it over and over, which is why the random generation is really fun, just because the game is not the same exact thing every time.
Wow.
So yeah,
I gotta play this game.
Really fun.
I gotta turn this off. I'm gonna have to boot up that game and show me it real quick.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. I'm really enjoying it. I played it for about an hour this morning. That I haven't put in more time than that, but I can definitely see me sinking a lot of time into it.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, that was it for today. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Podcast. As always, you can find me on Twitter at @mecoletta. Tyler is at SneakerElf, ELPH. We also have an email for the podcast, codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can rate and review and subscribe to us on iTunes. That means the world to us, and it really does help get the word out because we're not really advertising it. We've had friends come up to us and be like, "You guys do a podcast?"
Like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we're pretty bad about plugging ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
but we check it all the time. Like if you give us a 5-star review, we will see it, and it will make our whole day.
It will make
just
our
be
whole
so
day,
happy for
and
the
I
rest
will
of the day.
shout you out next podcast. I might even say your full legal name if you provide it.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't even care about privacy. Who am I? Facebook? Boom.
Hey.
Oh, look at us. Okay. But next week, we'll go into that legal stuff we talked about. And thank you so much for listening. And bye, everybody.
Goodbye.